Hey, we are live.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to the Vermont House Committee on the Environment. This afternoon, we are going to be hearing from our natural resource conservation districts, from three of them, and we welcome Dan Koneman. Oh, no, sorry, Corey Ross.
Yes.
Read the wrong name, Corey. I went to the hardest name first. Welcome.
Thank you. So yeah, my name's Corey Ross. I am the district manager for the Windham County Natural Resources Conservation District. We're based in Brattleboro and provide services throughout Windham County. Before I begin, I'd like to take a moment to just thank the committee for having us today and providing us this opportunity to speak with you. We really do appreciate it. Our presentation today is going to provide a little bit of an overview of the history of who the districts are, why they were founded, the work that we do, and some specifics about our funding request. Vermont conservation districts were established under the Soil Conservation Act of 1939. So we are subdivisions of state government. That was Title 10 in chapters 31 and 33. We were established to be the state's conservation delivery system. And the model of this is that it is a bottom-up, locally led democratic approach to tackling natural resources issues. Districts are governed by a local board of supervisors who are either elected or appointed. So the people making the decisions are in the community and are intimately familiar with the on-the-ground concerns and the priorities of the population they serve. It's also important to note that we are entirely non-regulatory, which is really important because landowners trust us. They are comfortable having us out on their land to talk to them and provide them with technical assistance because they know that we're not going to run off and tell somebody what we see. We think that's really important. It makes us unique and important. This flowchart breaks down the relationships between a few different entities that are all involved in delivering conservation services. The State Natural Resources Conservation Council is an agency of the state created by that same Soil Conservation Act. And it is found within the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets budget. So there's a line item in there for Natural Resources Conservation Council. They are the state agency that oversees the 14 conservation districts. You'll also see, the Natural Resources Conservation Council is made up of the supervisory union representatives. So 5 supervisors from around the state that are elected or appointed within districts. And then also the secretary of the Agency of Natural Resources, the secretary of the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, and the president of the UVM Extension. There are also 2 advisory members, the executive director of the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts and the state conservationist for the U.S. Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is a federal agency. Both attend council meetings and provide guidance, but don't vote. So then you'll see those 2 entities off to the side here. VACD, the Association of Conservation Districts, is on the left side, and the Natural Resources Conservation Service, the federal agency, is on the right side. All these entities work together to deliver conservation services to landowners. You see them, they are the center of this whole flow chart because everything is focused on delivering services to them and also collecting feedback from them, finding out what's going on the ground and making sure that that information gets back up to decision makers at the state and federal level. Conservation districts are designed to meet local needs. One of the biggest roles district staff play is as resource navigators. If any of you have ever had to tackle a federal grant or there's even many state grants, you know how complicated they can be and how daunting that is for a lot of landowners. District staff are intimately familiar with these. They can go out, they can meet with the landowner, they can learn about their concerns, and then they can help them navigate that process, fill out lots of paperwork, and help them secure funding and technical assistance to implement conservation projects on their land. We also deliver those services not just to individuals, but to municipalities across the state. And we also help leverage federal funding through that process.
Okay. We'll switch up. Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Danforth. I'm the district manager for the Moyle County Conservation District. And I'll kind of go over some of our robust programs that we provide for the state. So we kind of divide ourselves up into various sectors, one of which is natural resources and conservation in general. And this can be anything from tree plantings to floodplain restoration work, to riparian habitat expansion through culvert replacements and with dam removals. We have stormwater remediation, which is usually done in more of the urban environments, but also into the rural environments. And this can be essentially rain gardens to subsurface infiltration chambers that we put in. And we try to basically trap phosphorus and sediment before it gets into the watershed and to Lake Champlain in our case of where we are. In the case of where Corey is, he's more worried about the Connecticut River and nitrogen flows there. Agriculture, probably one of our most robust programs. We get a lot of support from the Agency of Ag and our AgSEBA partnership with that, as well as the NRCS, where we share offices with oftentimes. And this work has anything to do with technical outreach to helping, as Corey had said, write grants and help the farms support them in that way. We also do land treatment plants and other things that the NRCS also provides, but they sometimes don't have enough personnel to do so. So we kind of help them with that. And then education and outreach, which comes in all sorts of forms. So in the case of Lamoille District, we have an actual summer camp that is a day camp, and we also do outreach to all the schools, K through 12, with natural education programs and libraries as well. Other than that, just general education and outreach to the public on all the programs we do. And we try to help specifically after the flooding that's occurred recently, with community resilience forums and whatnot, and try to bring the expertise to the table so people know what's happening and they can make their correct decisions moving forward. I have to turn this right. Yeah. So, a lot of the funding we get is through something that's the Clean Water Act, was enacted not too long ago, and we use a lot of different tools to provide funds to get out to organizations like ourselves and other organizations to do the important work that we do. And one of the maps that we use is a tactical basin planning process. I'm not sure if you may be aware of that or not, but each basin has a tactical basin process that gets renewed every 5 years or so. And basically we look at areas along the watersheds and rivers to see where like some stressors are. We look at, where there are most pollutants, where there's most stress is flooding or with phosphorus runoff, et cetera. And so it's a very scientific model. And that's one of the ways we were able to identify areas that are really stressed and that we need to work with. Some of us are statutory members of basin water quality councils. The basin water quality councils are groups within each basin that work what we call the clean water service providers. And this is where the money is for the Clean Water Act is being mostly run through. And this money is going specifically to the reduction of phosphorus for the Champlain area. And then essentially I'm on 2 basin water quality councils. I'm the president for the Lamoille 7, Lamoille, and then also I'm on the board for 8 for the Winooski. Numerous projects have come out of this. We have 59 stormwater projects, 25 floodplain stream restoration projects, 27 lakeshore projects, 6 road projects, 36 planting sites, and 230 new projects being developed currently through this funding. So since 2016, there's quite a bit of work has been done. As you can see, a great deal of it has to do with our agricultural partners. 17,200 soil, manure, water quality samples collected. So that's our technical assistance element that we provide. 164 stream miles reconnected by the removal of dams, barriers, and culverts. 689 town projects assisted. 381 lake-wise assessments completed, and at least 20,863 participants in public workshops. And so as you can see, we kind of provide, in a way, a scaffolding for all the other projects that are going, or all the other programs that are happening. So we help the state transfer this money to important things. We help NRCS get their programs funded. We help other watershed organizations that we share with different resources. and the public, of course. And as Corey was saying, a lot of this is bottom up. In other words, many of these projects are come upon because we are working with the public directly. And that's something that the state can't always be, or aren't able to do most of the time. So we provide sort of that connection to make all these projects occur. Is that a good time? All right, I think we're on to, yeah.
So hi everyone, my name is Dan Kahneman and I am the district manager for the Winooski district, which covers Chittenden County, Washington County, and 3 towns in Orange County. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our request for this year and kind of the rationale behind it. So this year, the 14 districts collectively are requesting $3 million to cover operational costs for the districts and for NRCC, the Conservation Council. Currently, our funding is $612,000 a year, and we got an additional $100,000 one-time funding last year. That $612,000 is distributed among the districts, and it works out to about $35,000 a district, and then the $100,000 is distributed based on need. The governor has recommended $500,000 for us this year, which is a reduction of $112,000 from where we currently are. Both that $500,000 number and the $612,000 are really insufficient. They reflect decades of chronic underfunding of the districts. And we really believe that $3 million is like a bare bones amount for what we need to meet our statutory obligations. Where would that $3 million go? It would first and foremost go to supporting one district staff in each of the districts. So currently the districts range in size. Some districts have as many as a half dozen full-time staff, and others have not even a full-time staff. They have a half-time staff person. And so getting one full-time staff person covered in each district is a major part of this ask. We also believe that that $3 million would help retain and recruit additional staff members. So I know that in my district, staff turnover has been a big problem. As I'll talk about on the next slide, we fund ourselves mostly by grants, and that generates a lot of burnout. And I've had to replace all of my staff members within the past 6 months just because it's very difficult on them. So we think that this additional money would help retain other staff members in addition to the one full-time that gets supported. As was mentioned earlier, we are run by 5-member boards of supervisors, and they receive per diems. And we struggle at times to get supervisors to kind of step up to the plate, as with many small town elected officials, the interest isn't always there. So we think that perhaps adding per diems may be a help to that. We also think that $3 million will free us up to basically respond directly to our district residents' needs in a way that it's hard for us to do now because we're so tied to grant funding. So if we don't have the $3 million now, how are we currently funded? So we currently fund ourselves through a collage of grants. Private grants, federal grants, state grants, and basically we take the pay that comes from that, and as well as the indirect, and kind of put that into our administrative costs, and that's kind of how we fund our salaries. And so all of the districts have many grants, and sometimes as high as 50 or 60 grants at a time to try to pay for our employees and our staff, as well as do the work that we do. This creates a variety of challenges. So funding from grants is limited and inconsistent. You never know if a grant's going to be available the next year, even if you have it now, which makes it very hard to plan for the future and even to ensure that your staff are going to have jobs from one year to the next. It's also competitive. So we spend a lot of time looking for grants, writing grants, and all of that time is basically uncompensated. We had to find a way to pay for that work. And then once we do get the grants, it kind of hamstrings us into working on just those projects instead of being able to respond directly to the needs of our constituents. We think that a more appropriate way to pay for a lot of that administrative burden is through this core operating budget that we're asking for here. And this is really our only source of operational funds. Is from the state.
Cheers. So conservation districts were created alongside the Natural Resources Conservation Service because the federal government wanted there to be a local partner. that landowners would trust. That relationship between conservation districts and a federal agency is really special. To my knowledge, that is the only federal agency that has a local partner. It's a very unique model. Many districts are co-housed in buildings that are owned or leased by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And there are some advantages to that. If one of my staff are working with a farmer, trying to help them access a program, they can walk down the hall and speak with the soil conservationist at the federal agency and get things moving much more quickly, which is really important when farmers are trying to get paid so they can pay the bill that they have for the practice they implemented. We do get some other benefits from that, including, access to that office space, some NRCS tools and technology. And then a really big piece is what's called the locally led process, locally led conservation, and local working groups. And so through this process, districts are identified as the statutory lead of the local working group. And this group meets, collects public input, consults a variety of resources to write a natural resources assessment for their community, and then makes recommendations back to the federal government about what we see as key priorities. And districts have submitted proposals for what are called local fund pools in recent years. And when these are funded, it means there's a special pot of money that's just for your district, just for very specific needs. So for example, in Windham County, we identified introduced harmful species as a huge threat. We're a heavily forested county, and these are a major challenge for us. We were able to secure $450,000 in a special fund pool just for invasives management. So that's not money that comes to us at the district. It's money that goes to landowners to help them manage invasive species on their property. Many other districts have fund pools, have multiple fund pools. So we're very effective at leveraging additional federal money. It's important to note that although we have access to office space sometimes through unfunded cooperative agreements or memoranda of understanding, that we don't receive any support from NRCS for staff budgets or fringe benefits or any of the other like day-to-day operational expenses of being a government entity. As we've mentioned, districts have been very effective at securing federal funding. This does leave us vulnerable, as are many entities, to a lot of the things that are happening right now. We've identified about $4 million in current agreements that are either frozen or their status is unclear, which is complicating our work. Freezes in the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as the bipartisan infrastructure law, have resulted in a lot of money that we were planning on suddenly being on pause, and we don't know when or if it will be restored. That said, we are very effective at securing federal funding and getting it out on the ground where it can do the most good. So we think that's just a major strength of conservation districts. And as Dan mentioned, we have a request for a $3 million base appropriations, or $3 million in base appropriations. And one just additional point I wanted to make about that. When you apply for grants, you usually need matching funds. Funders really want to see that you're bringing something to the table. It's very difficult for districts to bring those matching funds because we don't have kind of that core funding source. Other types of organizations where at least one staff person is paid for through some other regular funding mechanism, that person's time can all be matched, and it can help them secure money. Conservation districts have made a difference in places that are special to all of us in Vermont. Here are some stats we're very proud of. In fiscal year 24, over 240 acres of invasive species removed or treated, 2 dams removed, partnered with 28 towns on municipal stormwater projects, over 33,000 stems sold through our plant sales, almost 4,000 participants in public workshops, 12 rural fire protection projects installed, and VACD, our state association, hires program assistants. Their program assistants facilitated roughly half of all of the NRCS land contracts in Vermont last year, which is pretty impressive. I'll just share one personal one from Windham County that I'm excited about. If any of you have ever been to the Dorchester Covered Bridge, it's the longest covered bridge found entirely within the state of Vermont. It's a very popular swimming hole, and some steps down to the river there washed out in one of the flooding events, resulting in a spot where you had to scramble down on your hands and knees. We were able to work with the town and the Conservation Commission, secure grant funding, design and install timber infiltration steps, swale, and a rain garden. So we're providing safe access to the river at a really popular point, and we're also protecting water quality through those stormwater improvements. And it was just really gratifying to see how excited members of the public were once that project was installed. And I think every district has many stories they would be happy to share like that. And we'd be happy to answer questions.
Great. Thank you all for your presentation. Looks like the slideshow is available now under Peter Danforth's name, for members. I have a couple of questions. How many of the conservation districts are functioning as clean water service providers?
Claire might know that number. Is it 2
Functioning as what?
clean water service providers?
Oh, I think only one.
Was that Hillary?
Putnam County, right? It's the
We had,
one that's
we did have,
Pulteney
Pulteney.
Mountain is.
fully melody.
Yeah.
yeah, we had them in. And what's the most we've allocated in general funds in the past? Is it the 600,000 last year?
To my knowledge, yes.
Yeah.
And you mentioned sort of constituent needs as if they're sort of unmet. What are the, can I get a few more examples of what those constituent needs are that you think this base funding would help you address?
Sure, we get a lot of requests for assistance, especially in relation to the flood incidents. Landowners who are saying, I'm very concerned the river, it ate more of my yard this past time. I think the next time it's going to take out my house or my garage or my driveway. They want someone to come out and look at the land with them and help them figure out what can they do? Do they need a permit? Do they need someone from DEC to come out and review the property with them? We can help them navigate that process and we can sometimes help them apply for funding.
Yeah, and so how many, like, are you also doing clean water projects yourselves? Okay, and that's sort of the list of the accomplishments that you gave us. I guess it's hard to understand. It's like some areas of the state have really strong watershed groups.
Mhm.
And so what's the overlap there and how are you working with them?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, we work quite a bit with other watershed groups. For instance, in the Winooski area, we have Friends of Winooski and
Friends of Mad River.
the Friends of the Mad River, and some of these people actually help with funding as well because they're with Watershed United Vermont, right? But aside from that, it's not really competitive. It's more of like there's so much work to do. We're trying to like almost help each other figure out where to go and how we can work together on projects sometimes. So it's kind of sometimes we give them a project, they give us a project. It's kind of one of those scenarios that the districts in general, some people have an office where there are people in the office that you work with. We work with everyone in the state, to find projects and to bring partnerships to make it happen. So we're in that sense, we're more of a collaborative effort, but we end up being sort of linchpin in a way for that. And oftentimes the administrator of a grant that could include other watershed groups as well. So it's kind of how we work with the state and in general in all the different groups.
Yeah, one of the things that makes us different from them is also that we are state entities and they are nonprofits
Right.
almost exclusively. Which is kind of what differentiates us. We end up doing a lot of similar work to them. And like Peter said, we share projects with them occasionally. I have co-grants with Friends of Winooski and Friends of Mad River currently. But yeah, we are a state organization. They're not.
Well, when you say you're a state organization, these are the only state funds you get. So what does that mean to you that you're?
Well, so it means that we are existing state statute. As effectively we're special units of government, effectively municipalities. The state of Vermont.
I guess from where we are, just trying to understand, we've been looking at a lot of clean water, maybe if you've been watching what we're doing and just understanding all of the projects types that we're funding and the organizations that we're funding and where you fit into that kind of map, the schema of
There is one other element, it has to do with the so there's the different grants going out for hazard mitigation. And other watershed groups aren't able to take those on as administrators, but because of who we are as municipalities, as a sub-government, instead of sub-unit of government, we're able to administer the hazard mitigation grants, which is pretty important at this moment, post-flood.
Just my last question, what do other states do? How do they fund their conservation districts?
So there's a variety of approaches out there. In some states, conservation district employees are employees of the county government. Obviously, that's a challenge for us in Vermont currently. There are some where there's a fee for service model out west, fees for using the land and then go to accounts. That model obviously doesn't translate easily to a place like Vermont. There's other models folks can think of.
Yeah, I think that the most common one that I'm aware of is the county level funding.
So like other New England states that would have a more robust county government, like Massachusetts, something more comparable would be interesting.
New Hampshire for sure, because I work closely with our partners across the river. Their district manager is a county employee.
Okay, great. Representative Tagliavia.
You used an example of helping property owners, landowners that come to you after flood damage or they're concerned they might have. How, just say for instance, we have a flooding event and it lasts, I don't know, 6 hours. How long does the actual permitting process and rebuilding, or I don't know if rebuilding is the right word, but to put back or to reinforce a property, say to save a home or stop more erosion at a later date? Are we talking a 6-month process, a year, 2 years?
I think we're talking anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, depending on the complexity of it and how many different funding sources might have to be involved.
And permitting.
Yes.
That was what it is.
Yeah, it's like.
Is it one permit or is it a layer of, sheets and sheets and sheets of permits?
Depends upon the site.
Further questions? Representative Pritchard.
What's a lake-wise assessment? What is?
So the Lakewise program is a really kind of an interesting way to encourage landowners who live on lake shores to be good stewards of that land. And they can have someone come out and assess their property for the way they're managing it. And they get a score. And if that score is high enough, they can get a Lakewise certification that they are a responsible lakeshore owner. It's a fully voluntary program, but then they have a plaque they can display that kind of brags to their neighbors about what a good job they're doing. And we found that these things kind of spread like wildfire around these lakes. In our district, Lake Rapondo was just given a Lakewise Gold Award, which requires a set percentage of the lakeshore properties to be successfully enrolled in the program.
But what are you doing? I mean, what is done?
So I can answer a little
To
bit.
get
So
the
so we
plaque.
have, so
Yes.
Lakewise is the state program that, certifies these particular landowners. It gives them the plaque and gives them credit for having good stewards. But if there is a land that they've identified that maybe could have some more work done, we can come in and actually at times find monies to help the landowners or resources. So we're in Lamoille County. We have Lake Elmore and Lake Eden. And what I've been doing is working with either funding through a state grant or through the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department, a grant to help pay for VYCC, Vermont Youth Conservation Corps members, come out and do work on people's land if they're open to that.
I guess
And
what kind of erosion control?
so erosion
or-
control, you have, so there's things called open top culverts, what you put on your driveway, which allows the water to, divert off of the driveway and prevent from eroding. There's simple storm drainage work that you can do.
Rain
You
gardens.
can rain gardens, you can do what we call encapsulated soil lifts, which is actually into the lake, which is a little more permitting involved, but essentially you're extending your lake shore to provide more of a vegetative buffer. So, yeah, and I mean, there's at least 15 or more different practices and that we offer, and we have actually a survey we give out to the landowners and say, what would you like done? And then hopefully we can bring in some either youth conservation corps, or we work with some other landscaping organizations like Northwood Stewardship and
Is that something that like Hillary would do in
Absolutely.
St. Catherine?
yeah.
And that's in effect, that program? Yeah, I just I've never heard of it.
Yeah, that's why we're here. Yeah, we're here because we really want you all to know what we do. And essentially is what's happening. Because I feel like we have kind of gone under the radar in the last, I think when we began, as Corey was saying, we were kind of the soil conservation go-to state went to and the farms went to help them. And as we evolved, we started to spread our wings into other areas, stormwater and resources. And I think in that time period, we kind of went under the radar because of all the work we did with all these different organizations. So we kind of got hit. And now we're saying, hey, recognize us. We're really doing some good work and we're growing, we're trying to grow. And yeah.
Many employees, add all of them together, conservation district.
Maybe we have that number.
Yes.
We can get
Employees.
that for you, like across all the districts.
Maybe just us. So my district, I have myself, I have 2 additional full-time staff and a half-time staff.
And you're with News.
And I'm a Winooski. Yeah.
In Wyndham, we have myself and 3 others, plus we also have an AmeriCorps serving with us this year.
And so you as the directors are scrambling and doing all the grant writing and things you were describing.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we have assistants with the people we work with who also write grants. So we have 4 full-time and 2 part-times, and at least one of the other ones, or now maybe 2 are helping me write grants. So that's, we're trying to spread that, but it's difficult.
Yeah, Representative Taglia.
On one of your slides, listed 12 rural fire protection projects installed. Can you tell me about those?
Yes, I'm wondering if Claire or Jill's not here, if Claire wants to talk about the Rural Fire Protection Program, because it's a VACD program.
Absolutely. And happy to introduce myself. My name is Claire Ireland. I'm working as the Director of Operations for the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts, and I'm here in Waitsfield, joining you remotely. So the Rural Fire Protection Program is it's a project that the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts runs on behalf of the state of Vermont. The goal is to install dry hydrants and other types of fire protection infrastructure in rural areas, and that helps with rural fire suppression. This can be used for either structural fires or for wildfires, as we're sort of increasingly seeing here in the state. We have one staff person at VACD who runs the entire program for the state, and that includes both providing towns with technical assistance in how to install these projects, as well as administering the funding that goes to town for the installations.
Do these projects include building of, and I'm thinking that you're talking about dry hydrants installed in ponds.
Yes.
Do these projects include the construction of a pond or only the addition of the dry hydrant to a pond?
You know, I would need to ask Troy, who's our program manager, about that. I believe the program tends to use existing bodies of water whenever possible to have as low impact as possible, and just to be most efficient with the use of funds, rather than creating new water sources. But I would have to get him to follow up with more details.
Can you give me an idea of average cost of one of those projects?
I cannot right now. I would need to pull that up. But I believe we've had, since the program's inception, about 2.9 million in funding leveraged towards this effort. And I believe we've had projects in almost every town in Vermont. This has been a program we've administered for the past 12 years. So it's been going sort of steadily for a while. And I will need to follow up with you on the specific numbers for that.
Thank you.
Visiting your chart here, the organizational chart.
Where is that?
It's the last entry under Peter's name, Peter Danforth so there were a number of submissions, but the slideshow is the last on the list. You want to look at it further. Members have more questions? You see it? Slideshow. You find it?
Yeah, it's SB one that I didn't.
I think it's the last one. It was the last one on mine.
There's a chart here.
Yeah. It's pretty complicated and
Oh, that's
doesn't even,
Yeah.
slide 3.
organizational chart.
Yeah.
This is what the question I was gonna ask, just because we've been hearing from a lot of agencies, and I didn't know if there's like a kind of flow chart of the ANR, Fish and Game, Forest Parks and Recreation, and then what comes under them.
There is that. And
That
this, this one includes they've put themselves here under the AAFM, so different agencies.
What's the AA?
Agricultural, food and markets.
Okay.
Um,
That would be just really helpful for me if there is a chart
There is one.
to access
But
it.
that's ANR and this is AAFM is my point. 2 different agencies. This is the
Right.
Agency of Agriculture.
But is there one with ANR, Fish and Wildlife, across the top, the agencies, and then, because we've heard from so many other,
So they're the A and R is the agency, and then there are departments under that. There's only three. We've heard from them, and then we've heard from people from within those departments. So yes, we can get you that.
That would be great.
It's not as complicated as this.
Yeah. It's in, agency bag, if you're looking for our line item. That's what
But it is, these interactions are pretty confusing, and I think they're maybe part of why you feel, I mean, it's hard for us to understand where you fit in, like Representative Austin was talking about, to our more global perspective, which is A&R does water projects, AAFM does them, and then here you are working sort of under AAFM, and I think helping us
But with,
on that.
I mean, that's the thing, it's like, we are under agency of ag, but we work with,
Purely for our funding.
purely for funding
Yeah.
reasons. Other than that, we work with a variety of agencies.
But how do you kind of discern who does what? You know, are there clear kind of descriptions of who, in terms of water quality, for instance? You know, do you have a certain piece of it and other organizations have other pieces of it? How do you determine that?
Well, there's a non-regulatory clean waters and that those are open sort of bid in a sense. So there's a clean water service provider that provides grants for clean water, right? And then any organization can apply for that money.
Okay, yeah,
So we can be one of those organizations.
and that's not part of the $600,000.
Correct. No,
Correct,
no.
okay.
So yeah, this is more of the core funding that we were talking about today. If you wanted that, what you're talking about, I think, is you could have all the organizations that we get grants from. And it'd be a list of like, 20, and it'll come down to us as far as getting the money.
Down here,
Right, yeah,
okay.
so getting that flow of money.
Well, that would actually be helpful for
That
us
could be a good thing
to
to.
get,
Great.
to get
That
that.
would be helpful.
Yeah.
If it's not, I don't want to put more, I mean, it
Oh,
sounds
no,
like
we
you
can
do
do
a
that.
lot of work and
But it would help us.
it would just help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Thank you again for joining us today,
Thank you so much.
for all your work on water and other projects.
Yeah.
Members,
Thank you for listening.
we have a little bit of time now. I personally am going to use it to catch up on reading
Pretty good laptop.
drafts of bills.
Oh,
I recommend
Yeah, oh, yeah.
do that. Okay. With that, we will adjourn for the afternoon.
I was